Today, I'm going to be doing a review of the Odelphi Strip Lamp Pro. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think of this thing, all the good things, the bad things. I'm going to do a battery test, and most importantly, I'm going to be doing a durability test. So if at the end of the video you decide you want one of these, you can go ahead and find the link in the description. You can use code BUSTEDBEATERS, all caps, no spaces, and get 10% off your order. So Odelphi sent me out a couple of these headlamps to test out, but I just want to mention that these Odelphi headlamps were sent to me by Odelphi for this review. I didn't purchase them with my own money. No one has had any sort of pre-approval or conditions to the contents of this video before it was released, and I haven't received any form of compensation for this video. They're really trying to market them towards mechanics. I'm not a mechanic, I don't know what they were thinking, but I'm going to be putting this thing through its paces, through a bunch of tests, and we're going to see exactly what this thing's all about. Since Odelphi didn't provide any sort of instructions on how to use this thing, I'm going to run you through it real quick. It has two buttons on it. You have a power button, then you have a wave sensor button. In order to turn on the lights, you're just going to hit that power button, and you can cycle through your 4 different settings. You have a high strip, low strip, and then you have the spotlight, high and low. Now in order to turn on the wave sensor, the light has to be on, and then you can turn on the wave sensor button, and the green and red light will both be on. And then you can use your wave sensor. Basically, it's just an infrared light, and it just detects when your hand's going across it, and it turns the light on and off. Now, in order to access the strobe mode, the light needs to be off, and you're just going to hold the power button, and then it's going to start strobing. Now, one thing to mention, when this thing is in the strobe mode, the wave sensor does not work, so you will not get any sort of wave sensor functions in strobe mode. To see how bright this thing is, I'm going to be comparing it to some other pretty popular headlamps. I got the Fenix HM50R V2 and then the Black Diamond Spot 350. In order to test these lights, I did take them to an abandoned tunnel. It is absolutely pitch black in here, no light whatsoever, and I'm standing about 20 feet away from the wall. So this is the Odelphi Strip Lamp Pro. This is the strip on high, the strip on low, beam on high, beam on low. This is the Fenix HM50R V2 on low, medium, high, and this is turbo mode, which puts out 700 lumens. Black Diamond Spot 350 does let you choose exactly what brightness setting you want. This is their distance mode, starting at high, going down to low, and then back up to high. And then this is their proximity setting, starting at high, down to low, back up to high. The Odelphi Strip Lamp Pro does put out the widest angle light pattern out of any headlamp I've ever used. So this is kind of showing you that 230 degree wide angle. And then as you go into the beams, it narrows up. I am standing about 30 feet away from this bench, so this is giving you a good idea just about how much light this thing is outputting. For the battery life, I wanted to give you guys a very accurate, realistic expectation of what you might get out of these headlamps. So I ran 4 tests on each light settings, and then I took that average and compared it to what Odelphi is advertising. So with the strip on high, these are the results of the 4 tests I ran, and then that gave us an average of 3 hours and 3 minutes of runtime, which is actually 30 minutes more than what Odelphi is advertising. Here are the results of the strip on low, giving us an average of 3 hours and 38 minutes, which is significantly less than the 5 hours being advertised by Odelphi. Testing the beam on high, these are the results. We average those out and we get 3 hours and 59 minutes of runtime, which is extremely close to what is being advertised at 4 hours. Testing the beam on low, these are the results. I got an average of 4 hours and 53 minutes of runtime, which is significantly less than the 8 hours being advertised. Strobe setting, these are the results I got, and that gave us an average of 2 hours and 4 minutes, which is 6 hours less than the 8 hours Odelphi is advertising. So this is extremely misleading. Do not expect to get 8 hours on strobe mode. I wanted to test and see how long it would take to charge up these headlamps. The first headlamp I had, that charge indicator light would switch over from red to green after about 4 hours. Now the second headlamp, it would switch over from red to green after about 12 hours. But if I unplugged that same headlamp after 4 hours of charging and plugged it back in, that indicator light would be green, showing that it was fully charged. So I think that was a defective unit, but from my results, anywhere from 4 to 12 hours will give you a fully charged battery. I just want to mention that I did charge both of the headlamps using the charging cables included with the headlamps, and I charged them out of the same power brick which has the same output voltages on both of those USB ports. These headlamps do get warm. The highest temperature I recorded was 93.6. It's not going to burn you, but you do notice it on your forehead. I've been using this headlamp for 2 months now, just in everyday activities, using it as much as I can, so I have a pretty good understanding of what I like and what I don't like about it. Now, some of the things I like this strip up in the front. It uses COB LEDs. Basically, that just lets them get more LEDs in a smaller area, and it's more efficient than some other types. It's 350 lumens, and it is very bright, and it throws out a very wide angle of light. So if you're working underneath a vehicle or something, it's going to illuminate everything in front of you, not just a single spot. You're going to have no problem seeing anything. Now this beam, the little spotlight on the side, I wanted to hate it. I really did. The light pattern of it is just terrible in my opinion. It throws out some very harsh rings as opposed to my everyday carry, which is a Streamlight Stylus Pro. That has a much more diffuse light pattern. It just seems much more refined and higher quality. I don't know. This just seems kind of cheap to me, but when I used it in the dark, it is actually very useful, and it does throw that light very far, so it did kind of grow on me. And then the last thing I really like, thank you so much for using USB Type-C to charge this thing. Finally getting with the times. Now, some of the things I don't like about this headlamp is that since it is not your traditional headlamp, you can't just take it and physically move it and shoot that beam in some sort of direction, say like at the ground. So if you're working around other people, you're gonna blind them because it's just throwing that light everywhere, and they're not gonna be real happy with you. Now the wave sensor, I haven't found it to be very reliable, and it's kind of gimmicky in my opinion. As I'm walking around, it's turning off and on. If you're in direct sunlight, it's not going to turn off or on. And you may be saying like, well, when am I ever going to be using a headlamp in sunlight? Well, say you're working on your vehicle outside and you need to get underneath your dash. You're not going to be able to use the wave sensor when you're outside, and then if you go underneath your dash, it's going to be turning off and on. That was one of the things I didn't like about it. And the last thing, the build quality. The build quality is not the best. It does seem a little cheap in my opinion. I'll run you through a couple of things that I don't like about the build quality. It has an IPX4 rating, so it is not meant to be waterproof, but it would be nice if little things such as this cover were fitted so it actually kind of sealed off that charging port, because with it just kind of flapping around and open, you're going to get a whole bunch of gunk and stuff in here. And this thing's advertised to be a mechanic's light, so it's going to be getting dirty. That's just the environment this thing is meant to be in. Now, if we tear this thing apart, you can see the inside of here. This is all just plastic. Your battery is exposed, and your circuit board is exposed with all these little cutouts with your buttons and these sensors. So definitely not waterproof. Would not recommend sticking this thing in water. Now, your strip in the front here, it's just held in to the silicone, and it's just glued onto the back of that. So that's not exactly the highest quality, but I honestly don't know how else they would be able to get that in there. And during all my testing, I didn't see any issues with that. And one last thing, this lens up here is plastic. So now we get to see just how durable this thing is. Now it's rated for 2 meter impact resistance. That's about 6 feet 6 inches. So I'm gonna start it off easy on some grass, and we're gonna see how it does. And then we're gonna escalate it until this thing breaks. Same exact test on asphalt. Now, I'm not exactly a mechanic, but I think they tend to hit their head on a lot of things. At least I do when I'm working on stuff. And being that I have such a beautiful face, I'm gonna simulate that exact same thing with this football. Might have been an extreme simulation, but seems like everything still works. Now this is the classic mechanic throw a tool against the wall test. A little bit dirty, but still works. This is the grinder test. Welding test. Now, we're not all the best mechanics in the world, so some of us might get the great idea to open up the radiator cap while your vehicle's still hot. Still works. Drop test, 1 story onto grass. This is 1 story on the concrete. So I got Stu the Honeydew here, and he's gonna be helping me with this drop test, and we're gonna see if either of them can survive this 2-story drop. Be good, little guy. Well guys, we lost Stu, but that is one tough headlamp. Look at that, even with a little water in there. That's pretty tough. I did not think that thing would survive, but works perfectly fine. Oh, I'm not done. Ooh. Well, you guys, this thing is tore up. I got all the guts hanging out of it. The plastic housing broke, but you're not gonna believe this. That strip still works. The spotlight no longer works, and the button is definitely a little more finicky, but that's pretty incredible. This thing's pretty tough. Completely blew my mind. This light stayed on for about 2 hours, so we're gonna see if we can't kick it on again. It still works. So I'm gonna let this dry out overnight, and we're gonna keep testing. Now you know everything you need to know. Let me know in the comments. Are you gonna buy one of these?